In my last video, I dared to say that I didn't think there'd be any more info to come out about Tactics Ogre Reborn mere days prior to release. Square Enix apparently decided to make me look the fool and put out a press release covering the finer points of recruitment, dungeons, the Warren Report, and a new feature called Relic weapons. There's also some minor details I missed in my all the latest info video, and I mean, that just can't stand, so let's talk. Hello everyone, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. If you find these videos useful or interesting, please subscribe. I'm trying to hit 2,000 subs by the end of the year, and I need all the help I can get. First, let's touch on those couple points that were left out of my previous video. The World Tarot, Chariot Tarot, and more buff card information. The World Tarot allows you to essentially rewind time and play the different story paths in the game with your current party. This was Tactics Ogre's take on New Game Plus. In the 2011 release of the game, enemies and their equipment would scale to your level, meaning you couldn't just breeze through different parts of the story with your fully leveled, geared to the teeth endgame party. In Reborn, it seems like that's no longer the case. Now, when you use the World Tarot, you will maintain your level advantage, and will no longer be constrained by the party level that now exists. This will consequently shift the endgame focus from replaying the story to grinding dungeons and playing the after-story coda content. We'll discuss those dungeons later in the video. Now I should note, and this is actually an after-script addition, I've been seeing people state that apparently you do have the option to scale your level and your equipment down to meet what you would normally have at that point in the story if you choose to go back using the World Tarot. So if you wish to go through the story with your current party and classes and all that type of stuff, but still have a challenge on your hands, apparently the game is designed to accommodate for that, which is awesome. I think that's really just the best of both worlds. So very cool. I like these changes. Moving on to the Chariot Tarot, for those who don't know, this is a rewind mechanic, which should be very familiar to anyone who has played a modern Fire Emblem game such as Fates or Three Houses. It allows you to go back and repair a mistake that might cost you a unit or even the whole battle. Originally, you were able to rewind up to 50 turns, essentially resetting the battle, or at the very least allowing you to replay from a vastly earlier point during said battle. Now, the Chariot Tarot is limited to going back 10 turns, which is obviously a huge difference. However, it should be noted that this will increase as the story progresses to account for bigger battles and more units being in play, although we do not yet know just how high this number of turns will get by the end of the game. Will it reach 50, as it was originally? Could it be more than 50? We just don't know. Finally, let's revisit buff cards. When I originally spoke about them, I was under the impression that buff cards had fully replaced the tarot cards of Let Us Cling Together, that they were the only cards to exist now. I also was not clear on when and where those cards would appear on the field of battle. Turns out, there's quite a bit of info I missed here. First off, we do know how these cards will appear. According to Square Enix, they, quote, appear at random after a certain amount of time passes, an obstacle is broken, or grassy or snowy fields are cleared with fire magic or the like, unquote. Essentially, a number of battlefield conditions could cause these cards to appear, making your ability to adapt on the fly when they do appear all the more important. However, these are not the only cards that could appear under these conditions. There are also reset cards, which function as you might expect, by resetting the stats of a unit that picks it up if that unit had previous buff cards applied to it. This will clear all stacks of any buff cards and takes effect the instant the card is picked up. Finally, there are stat cards. When you defeat an enemy, either a bag of loot or a stat card will drop. When picked up, these stat cards will permanently increase a given stat for your unit, which is exactly how the tarot cards of the past functioned. So there you go, tarot enjoyers. While I still don't know if we will be getting cards for our inventory that can be used later to apply buffs, like when you would pick up tarot cards in the past, at the very least, we now know that you can still get that permanent tarot buff on the field of battle, which is cool. And those are the things that I missed previously. And it's all very good information to have. Thank you to those of you who pointed out information in the comments of my previous video that I had missed. It's exactly what I count on you guys to do, so we can make sure we have it all compiled in video form eventually. My apologies for leaving it out before. I just honestly missed it. Now, let's get to the new details. We start off discussing the Warren Report, and I have to admit, my knowledge of the Warren Report is rather shaky. For those of you who are not familiar with the game, the Warren Report holds all of the data about your playthrough, such as how many enemies you've slain, how long you've been playing, how many allies you've lost, etc., etc. You can review tutorials and gameplay tips, see character profiles, and get a recap of past events. However, you can also see scenes that are unique to the Warren Report and unlock new areas to explore by reading it. I don't recall if this was the case in the PSP release as well, but either way, it's worth checking out from time to time, and it's a feature that was pointed out by Square, so I wanted to emphasize it. Now, about those dungeons that I mentioned earlier in the video. Dungeons comprise a meaty chunk of Tactics Ogre's side quest and post-game content, and now they're gaining a vital role as part of your party's growth as well. Due to the removal of random battles, you can now only recruit enemy units through these dungeons, so it will be vital that you take the chance to dive in if you want to diversify your army and your tactical options. Square makes the point that you can even find enemies with classes that you can't otherwise get at that point in the story that you are at it, so it can be a nice little power boost if you can find one of those and recruit them. Dungeons can be replayed as many times as you want, and some unlock more locations to explore as you complete sections or progress through the story. The revealed dungeons, as far as we are aware, are the Farampa Wildwood, the Palace of the Dead, and the Pirate's Graveyard. There should be additional dungeons, such as shrines, that allow you to earn new spells and weapons, but those have not yet been discussed. While we haven't heard about any new dungeons that have been added to the game, there is another reason to dive into them. Dungeons now contain new items called Relics, unique equipment with special stats and bonuses attached to them. By grinding dungeons, you can find multiple copies of a relic and combine them to increase their power and further strengthen your party. What's interesting to me is why this isn't just a normal part of the crafting system, seeing as how upgrading your gear is specifically what the crafting system allows you to do. My guess is that it's so you can increase the power of these items without the need of ores and other materials. Maybe you can do it while you're in a dungeon rather than having to wait until you get to a shop to do crafting, but we don't know the details. We're gonna have to wait and see for now, but this also sounds really cool. And that's all the new information that we have been provided since my previous video. All told, this is a nice little info dump. I wasn't expecting it all to receive, and I hope you all found it useful. As far as my thoughts, I'm quite pleased on all counts with all of this. While it's odd that the World of Tarot will no longer scale enemies to your level unless you choose to have it do so, I do like that it gives you the opportunity to not take quite as long to experience other story paths in the game, because you get to see where the story is going to lead, and you can recruit new characters and even potentially get unique classes that you can only find on that route, allowing you to further diversify your party before you start really grinding the end game. It'll also just allow you to put more time in general in-game into focusing on that very interesting and challenging post-game content. The Palace of the Dead alone is at least 100 levels deep, and you have to go into it multiple times to see all the story content and get all of the rewards out of it, so it's a big time investment, and not needing to spend as much time on the story, that's nice. I'm also happy that the Chariot Tarot has been scaled back, as rewind mechanics like that have been seen to trivialize otherwise challenging games. It's something I've seen a lot of people discuss and even complain about in modern Fire Emblem, when you get 14 dragon pulses, or depending on what game you are in, whatever the mechanic is called, when you have 14 opportunities to rewind time as much as you want, there almost winds up being no threat to you. So having an unlimited system that is otherwise very limited in how many turns you can go back, I feel like that's going to be a good balance, and potentially a better implementation than we had in previous releases of the game. Knowing now how buff cards spawn, and that there will be a variety to what types of cards spawn, is nice, and makes me more excited for the system than I was before. I'm pleased that there will be the option to gain permanent stats in battle, as well as using tokens outside of battle. I'm sure that will please pretty much everybody. And finally, I love the changes to dungeons. Post-game dungeon content is the content that I'm unfortunately the least experienced with in Tactics Ogre, so hearing that there's even more incentive to get in there and do some exploring has me extremely, extremely excited. But that is all there is to say today. Once again, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Let me know what you think of these announcements. Please consider subscribing if you want to stay on top of all of my Tactics Ogre coverage up to and through the release of the game. Have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other. Bye now.